We left off in our last video in the 1300 block of Military Street on the east side. And if we were to go to the southern corner of the east side, we will find this building right here. Today this building houses Woman's Life. Women's Life mission statement is, Women in Life connects women with other women who care, giving women a special place to belong and a close community of friends with the unparalleled opportunity to make a difference together for the causes important to them. One of the things they provide is financial security, and by that I mean they provide life insurance. And life insurance is what this building is all about, specifically women's life insurance. It wasn't always called Women's Life. As we look at this building a little closer, we can see it went under different names. Before it was shortened to Women's Life, it was originally a Women's Life Insurance Society, as you can see engraved in here in the building. While we're at it, look above there. You can see there's 4 heads on top of near that railing. I never noticed that before. I've been by the building many times. Here's a little better picture of it. Before it was Women's Life Insurance Society, it was called Women's Benefit Association. And before that, it was called Women's Benefit Association of the Maccabees. I believe the photo for this postcard was taken shortly after this building was built. In a couple of years, this building will be 100 years old. On October 22, 1915, Port Huron's mayor declared a public holiday. That's when the cornerstone was placed for the association's headquarters. The structure, with an exterior of Indiana limestone and Corinthian columns flanking its entrance, would be dedicated 2 years later and was opened for business in 1917. In this photo here, you notice the trees out front. Those trees are no longer there. There's also a little more landscaping around the building, and of course there's this vintage automobile. In this postcard you can see a little bit more landscaping that's been added, and it's a little bit more colorful. In 1921, there was an addition put on the rear of the building that almost doubled the size of the building. And you can kind of compare it with this inset here, that you can see there's a much longer building in the larger picture. And you can see in this current view that the addition was only about half as wide as the front part of the building. It still made for a very long building, and it created a lot of additional space for them. This video isn't actually about this building. It's not even about the insurance company. It's about a woman, an extraordinary woman who had vision, compassion, fortitude, and perseverance. Her name was Bina West. Bina West was the founder of the Women's Benefit Association, and she is proof that one person can change the world. She saw a social injustice and corrected it through hard work and entrepreneurship and goodwill. In the process, she broke through one of the strongest cultural barriers in history, bias against women. The injustice she confronted was the inability of average women to secure life insurance in the late 19th century. This left women, and in many cases their children, without a benefit available to men. West achieved her goal in a resounding way that changed insurance practices in America. She was born in 1867 and christened Bina West. Of course, she shortened that, and throughout her lifetime she always went by the name of Bina West. To give you some idea of the time frame, James Buchanan was just inaugurated President of the United States. On a side note, this is the first photo that was ever taken of a presidential inauguration. You see some movement here, and that's because the photographer had his lens open for about 4 seconds. Some of the audience can be seen quite clearly. Bina West was born and raised in Capac, Michigan. She attended school there and graduated from Capac High School. She later went on to complete her studies at St. Clair County Normal School, and at the age 18 graduated. She then returned to her alma mater, Capac High, as a teacher and assistant principal. At age 20, she won a seat on the Board of County School Examiners, one of the first women in Michigan to hold elective office. As a 24-year-old teacher, West was profoundly affected by the fate of her two favorite students, her brother and sister. Their mother died and their father could not afford a housekeeper to care for them. His children were placed in separate foster homes where the girl worked as a domestic servant, and the boy was lent out to work in a livery stable. The children lost their mother, their family, and their futures at the same moment. West believed the family would have survived the death of the father because he had life insurance through a fraternal society. Unfortunately, at that time, average women were considered uninsurable because of their high mortality rate in pregnancy and childbirth. So the mother had been uninsured. This scenario wasn't uncommon in those days. Shortly afterwards, in June of 1891, West and her Aunt Nellie attended a picnic held by the Knights of the Maccabees in Port Huron. The society offered life and disability insurance to members, as well as providing self-improvement programs and other social benefits. The members were all male, however. An inspiring speech that was given by Nathan Boynton gave West the idea of extending those advantages to women, and the idea burned in her like a fire. As the horses jogged along the road, coming back home from the picnic, she told her Aunt Nellie, "I believe this life insurance for women is the greatest thing I ever heard of. I think I shall make this my life work. Here is a real need, and I know I can fill it." It was a bold statement, and was uttered at a time when women could not vote for a president. They did not have the same property rights as men, and they could not serve on juries. She began immediately after her revelation on the road back from the picnic in Port Huron to Capac by helping to found the Women's Auxiliary of an existing male fraternal order, the Knights of the Maccabees, in Capac, Michigan. This was a bold new development, as such auxiliaries had met with ferocious opposition from men and had only recently been allowed. Bina threw herself into the work of the auxiliary, which served her local area, and by August she was already a delegate to a statewide meeting of auxiliary officers. She so impressed Major Nathan Boynton, who was the founder of the Knights of the Maccabees, that he offered her a job based in Port Huron, overseeing the setting up of new auxiliaries across all of Michigan. She went home to discuss the offer with her parents. She had the unwavering support of her mother Elizabeth, who is shown in this picture with Bina. She succeeded in winning over her husband. He was deeply concerned about his 24-year-old unmarried daughter traveling alone all over Michigan. So she left her home and she moved to the big city of Port Huron. Well, at least big compared to Capac. And in this photograph here, you can see that large dome, and that's where she worked. That was the Knights of the Maccabee building. The Knights of the Maccabee building would later become the Algonquin Hotel. Nathan Boynton gave her an office in the basement of the Maccabee building. There she worked tirelessly to establish new auxiliaries around the state and recruiting new members. She received no salary. Her contract was commission only, her earnings based on her success in recruiting the members and setting up the auxiliaries. She had little to worry about. By the summer of 1892, she had established 146 new groups and recruited 3,433 new members. These new auxiliaries of the Knights of the Maccabees were called Ladies of the Maccabees. They would be collectively known as the Women's Benefit Association, a non-profit, dues-supported organization run exclusively for and by women. The association really started to prove its worth in September of 1893 when 4 women members died. All 4 widowers were promptly accorded substantial payments. The first of the 4 women had been paying dues for only 4 months, but her husband received his check in under 3 weeks. It was enough to allow him to keep his family together. What you're looking at here is a monthly rate for the insurance policies for the ladies. A little over 2 years after her fury at the fate of her 2 pupils, who lost their education at the same time as losing their mother, Bina was having a life-changing impact on families across America. As membership soared, that impact could soon be seen on a daily basis. Port Huron chapter of the Ladies of Maccabees was so successful that they soon had to break ground for a new building, a building that most of us in Port Huron are quite familiar with. This building is located at the intersection of Huron Avenue and Pine Grove Avenue. It later became the Port Huron Junior College. We looked more in depth at this building in a previous video, if you recall, part 8 of our video series. We're very fortunate that this building still exists. It's one of the historical buildings of Port Huron. Not only was there building expansion, the Bina West staff expanded as well. Here we see several ladies that had joined Bina West staff as secretaries, which was a pretty daring step in the late 19th century, when most ladies wouldn't even think about joining the workforce outside their home. Bina undertook longer and longer trips to recruit members and start new branches in response to the letters pouring into Port Huron. Her training was one on which a generation earlier a young Thomas Edison had sold newspapers. In 1894, she traveled by rail as far as California, setting up new chapters in Los Angeles and several of the cities there. By day, she would travel or run training meetings for local staff and volunteer officers, and by night she would lecture groups ranging from a few score to several hundred. She was even able to command audiences of several thousand. The Women's Benefit Association was speedy and effective, even when required on a grand scale. On April 18, 1906, a huge earthquake hit the San Francisco Bay Area. 52 people died and 28,000 buildings collapsed. Without waiting for any claims, Bina wired the local rep $1,000, the equivalent to about $30,000 today. Each member was asked to help, and a further $125,000 in today's money was quickly raised. News of these early women's group had spread throughout the country, and the parent male fraternal order, the Knights of the Maccabees, was concerned about two matters. The first was how to cope with the surging demand for women's benefits, and the second was how to ensure uniformity across the different state-based organizations. Their solution was to form a national coordinating office with Bina as the full-time head of the office. It would be her responsibility to keep growing New York, Michigan, and Ohio, ensuring that all followed the same procedures and guidelines, and to spread the business model to the other 41 states that existed at the time. With her savings and a $500 loan, worth about $12,000 today, Bina opened a new national office based as before in Port Huron, and busied herself devising forms and prospectus and rules. Soon their membership numbered over 100,000. Not only was the insurance important to these women, but also the social outlet that the Ladies of the Maccabees provided for them, especially in the rural areas. There were many social activities, many community activities that they took part in. This document basically said that they could sign up to be part of the Ladies of Maccabees without having the insurance, just for the social benefits. The Ladies of the Maccabees planned picnics for the ladies, and of course they had their own sports teams in some cases, such as this one here, which is basketball, I believe. And then, of course, they had other things as well. As this picture shows, I'm not sure what this is. It looks like shuffleboard sticks, but it could be a mystery. Also gave them opportunity to meet ladies of the same interest and just hang out and have a good time. The WBA was big on parades. If there was a parade, the WBA would be in it. And as you can see here, this is the horse and buggy days, but they were in the parades. And this later picture, this was taken in Port Huron during Edison's Golden Jubilee Parade. And of course they had mechanized vehicles at that time, and they made use of those as well. This Port Huron parade, you can see the military bridge in the background, and this part of the parade was the open car division for women's clubs. And of course, WBA was an integral part of that. You can't see any of their signage on their vehicles because the photographer was focusing on the lead vehicle, which is the YWCA vehicle, but the WBA was there. This photograph was taken in 1920, and the group looks pretty spiffy. In 1932, they looked something like this. And in 1943, this is what they looked like. During World War I, the WBA conducted Red Cross classes. These willing volunteers posed in front of the new building that was on military. They knitted scarves and packaged supplies for the boys overseas. If you look closely, this pennant in the left window probably proclaims votes for women, because Bina West became an outspoken advocate for women's suffrage and traveled throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, and the Near East, urging that women be given the right to vote. In this booklet put out by the Women's Benefit Association, A Modern Story of Achievement, it illustrated how the WBA was involved in many things to help the community. Over here we see the prize winner in a healthy baby contest, and that was in Ohio. Over here we have the nursing class, which was in the District of Columbia. And below here we also have the health center that's maintained by the members of the association, and that was in Texas. On this next page we have 4 other photographs that just tell, maybe some of the fun things they were doing in the WBA. Here we see what it calls a beautiful guard team in Bellingham, Washington. I'm not sure what they were guarding, but they are beautiful. Over here we have a happy WBA outing, having fun in the water, and then down below we have the chapter in Illinois having their picture taken. And then over to the right here, they got their young people involved, it looks like. A youthful WBA Junior Drum Corps. So they had a lot of things for their members going on to be involved in. And last but not least, you got to wear a very pretty pin. As you can see, a couple that are displayed here that they could put on their lapels or dresses or whatever. LOTM, Ladies of the Maccabees. Nathan Boynton died in 1911, and the Knights of the Maccabees abandoned Port Huron for Detroit. It appeared as if the Lady Maccabees also would shift their headquarters to Detroit as well. The organization had bought property there for a new temple in 1910. Bina put a stop to it. The Women's Benefit Association of the Maccabees, as the organization became known, remained in Port Huron. Also in 1915, the cornerstone was laid for the Society's elegant Renaissance-style headquarters on Military Street. Its builder was James O'Sullivan, a Port Huron High graduate, who would earn the claim as the father of the Grand Coulee Dam. In 1917, when the building opened, Port Huron called a civic holiday and celebrated with a parade, oratory, and the singing of the national anthem by a choir of 300 children. No longer was Bina West relegated to a basement office where she received no salary. A 24-year-old high school teacher that had compassion on her 2 students turned that compassion into an insurance company for women the world had never seen before, and opened that door for other insurance companies to offer insurance to women. And she ran that international company right here on Military Street in Port Huron. And it looks like she had a little better office. While attending the National Fraternal Congress of America, she met her future husband, George W. Miller, who was a prominent Chicago attorney, and they married in 1929. The marriage was short-lived, however. Mr. Miller died 3 years later. She was saddened by several losses in her family. The husband, of course, and 5 years previous her mother had died, and the same year her husband died, her only brother had died as well. Her sorrows were keenly felt, but life must go on were the brave words with which she met the world. Bina West Miller opened 4 summer camps for girls in Missouri, New York, Pennsylvania, and on the shores of Lake Huron, where in 1923 the Society paid $11,750 to buy 200 acres with a half a mile of lake frontage. Lakeport Camp attracted families from across the nation. Thousands of children, most of them daughters of the WBA members, paid $8 a week to swim and play on the shores of Lake Huron. The camp was noted for its Japanese architecture. It featured a network of boardwalks and graceful bridges over creeks and ravines. It flourished until a double whammy of the Depression and World War II. The camp was sold in 1942 to the CIO Union. Today, the old camp for girls provides a public beach and picnic grounds for Lakeport State Park. In addition to her role as a pioneering female executive, Bina West Miller was also a notable figure in local, state, national, and international politics. She was a lifelong Republican, and she served on presidential commissions and advisory councils, and in 1928 was chosen to make one of the nominating speeches for Herbert Hoover. Among her many honors, she was given an honorary degree from the University of Michigan. She was also included in the 1914-15 edition of Women's Who's Who in America. In 1928, she was named the state's top businesswoman in the Detroit Free Press poll, and at one time the Associated Press called her one of the 5 greatest women in America. Not bad for this 16-year-old high school graduate. Bina West Miller continued to lead the WBA until May of 1948, when she resigned after more than half a century at the helm. Inspired by her European travels, Bina built a 3-story Spanish-style home on Military Street overlooking the St. Clair River. The grounds of West Haven, as she named the property, featured elaborate Italian-inspired gardens and a large outdoor swimming pool. And you can see here as we zoom in, it had like 3 balconies out front. And it had an amazing amount of windows all the way around the house. It must have been very bright inside. In this photograph here, you can see how the windows wrap all the way around the home. And if you look up here in the 3rd floor, you see that the northeast corner has a screened-in porch. It must have been quite nice out there in the evening, looking at the St. Clair River and feeling the evening breezes. Bina West Miller loved her flowers, she loved her gardens, and she had a beautiful backyard. They even had postcards of her yard. And on that slope going down to the river, you can see what she had right here, kind of a pergola-type structure. I'm sure it was very enjoyable, very beautiful actually. This photograph here shows the rear of the house and also shows that there was a dock going out into the St. Clair River. Of course, today it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like this. And it's located between Center Street and Reed Avenue. Today there's houses on both sides of 2828, but when Bina West Miller lived there, she had pretty much the whole block. To the north it was 2806, the nearest home, and to the south it was 2906 to the nearest home, according to the directories. She would have had a lot of property attached to the home. And you can see in the satellite view here a picture of the backyard. But during the time she was there, I don't think there was any homes even close to her. I told you she loved her garden, and I think one of the reasons is this. She said, "You are near God's heart in a garden." She passed away on April 18, 1954, after a short illness. This beautiful home became apartments and later was torn down and other homes built on her property. She was buried in Lakeside Cemetery with a very modest tombstone. There's no recognition of all the achievements that she accomplished over her lifetime. The only thing is a small emblem on the bottom right-hand corner. I thought for sure it had something to do with the Maccabees, or ladies of the Maccabees. But it said she was a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Bina West Miller was a woman's woman. From her mother, Elizabeth West, a direct descendant of Roger Conant, first governor of Massachusetts, she inherited the New England spirit of independence. from her father, a prominent lumberman in northern Michigan, a pioneering courage and vision and a determination to see things through. On one occasion, when a special honor had been paid to her, she said this: "There is nothing unusual about success. I only carried out my ideas. Too many people fail because they are afraid of other people's opinions. Especially is this true of women. The only thing to do is to go ahead." In our next video, we'll see if there's anything across the street, and if not, we'll go into the next block.